The night of the blood moon was supposed to change everything. For most wolves, it was the moment they discovered their mate, the person fate had chosen to stand beside them forever. For Lyra Vale, it became the night her entire life shattered. The pack grounds were alive with celebration. Torches flickered against the tall pine trees surrounding the clearing, their flames dancing in the cold night air. Wolves laughed, drank, and waited for destiny to reveal itself. But Ilara stood alone at the edge of the gathering, as always. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Still hasn't shifted. Useless Omega. Why does the pack even keep her? She kept her eyes lowered, pretending the words didn't pierce her chest like silver blades, because if she let herself feel them, she might break. Ilara was 19 years old and still wolfless. In a world where every werewolf shifted by 16, she was an embarrassment to the moon goddess herself. At least, that's what everyone believed. Her fingers trembled as she wrapped her thin cloak tighter around her shoulders. Tonight was her last chance. If she found her mate, everything could change. A mate bond could give her protection, status, belonging, maybe even love. A sudden cheer erupted from the center of the clearing. The Alpha's son is here! Ilara's heart clenched. Kale. Tall, powerful, golden-eyed, the future alpha of the Silver Fang pack, and the boy she had loved silently for years. He stepped into the torchlight like a king already crowned. The crowd parted instantly. Females straightened. Warriors lowered their heads. Even the beta bowed slightly. But Kale's gaze swept across the crowd until it stopped on her. Ilara's breath caught. Her wolfless heart pounded violently. He was walking toward her. The murmurs around them grew louder. No way. Is she his mate? Impossible. Kale stopped just inches away, close enough for her to feel the heat of his body, close enough to smell the powerful scent of pine and storm that surrounded him. Then it happened. A sharp pull exploded inside her chest, like an invisible thread snapping tight between their souls. Her knees nearly buckled. Mate. Tears instantly filled her eyes. For the first time in her life, hope surged through her veins. Kale, she whispered, but his expression twisted with disgust. The bond shimmered between them, undeniable. The entire pack could feel it. Gasps rippled through the clearing. The alpha son had found his mate, and she was Ilara, the wolfless girl. Kale's lip curled. This is a mistake. The words struck harder than any physical blow. Her heart dropped. Kale, she pleaded softly, but his voice rose, cold and merciless. I, Kale Thorne, future alpha of Silver Fang Pack. The clearing went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Ilara's chest tightened with dread. Reject you. The word echoed through the clearing like thunder. I reject you as my mate. The bond between them snapped. Pain exploded through Ilara's body. She collapsed to her knees as if the moon goddess herself had struck her down. The crowd erupted in cruel laughter. She actually thought she had a chance. A wolfless Luna? Pathetic. Kale stepped closer, his voice dripping with humiliation. You are nothing but a burden to this pack. His golden eyes burned with disdain. Leave. Ilara's vision blurred with tears. Her entire world had just been destroyed. The mate bond was gone, her place in the pack gone, her dignity gone. Slowly, shakily, she forced herself to stand. No one tried to stop her. No one defended her, because to them, she was already nothing. Ilara turned away from the only home she had ever known and walked into the dark forest. Behind her, the pack returned to celebrating as if nothing had happened, as if she had never existed. But deep within the mountains, something ancient stirred. Golden eyes opened in the shadows. The Lichen King had felt it, a broken mate bond, and the scent of the girl fate had meant for him. Far away, a deep voice rumbled in the darkness. Find her. Because the girl the pack had cast aside belonged to him now. And when the Alpha King finally found her, the entire world of wolves would burn. Miles away from the Silverfang packlands, deep within the jagged mountains where few wolves dared to travel, an ancient fortress stood carved into black stone. It was a place whispered about in legends, a place where power older than most packs still ruled. Inside its towering halls, the Lichen King sat upon a throne made of obsidian and bone. King Alaric Draven, the first of the Lichens, the most feared alpha in the entire wolf world. Warriors from dozens of packs stood before him, their heads lowered in submission. The air in the throne room was heavy with power, thick enough to make weaker wolves struggle to breathe. Alaric's presence alone could dominate an entire pack. He was massive, broad-shouldered, with long dark hair that fell over his shoulders like shadows. His golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim torchlight, holding the quiet fury of a predator who had ruled for centuries. No one spoke unless he allowed it. No one dared challenge him, because every wolf in the world knew one truth: the Lichen King answered to no one. A messenger knelt before the throne, trembling. "My king, the northern packs request your presence at the council. They fear rogue activity near their borders." Alaric said nothing. He simply leaned back in his throne, one hand resting on the carved armrest. His mind was elsewhere. For months now, something had felt wrong. A restless tension beneath his skin, a pull he couldn't explain. Lichens did not experience mate bonds the way ordinary wolves did. Most believed they had none at all. Yet lately, strange dreams had haunted him. A girl running through the forest, silver eyes filled with sadness, a scent he couldn't identify but couldn't forget. And tonight, it suddenly happened. Pain, sharp, violent, exploding through his chest like lightning. Alaric shot to his feet. The warriors in the room instantly dropped to their knees. "My king!" But Alaric barely heard them. His hand pressed against his heart as a wave of emotion slammed into him. Despair, loneliness, humiliation. It was overwhelming, and it wasn't his. Golden eyes flashed dangerously. Someone, somewhere, had just suffered a mate bond rejection. But this was different. This pain felt personal, connected, as if the suffering belonged to someone tied directly to his soul. The lichen wolf stirred violently beneath his skin. Mine. The word echoed inside his mind like thunder. The Lichen King froze. Impossible. Lichens did not have mates. The legends had always said so. Yet the instinct roaring through his veins now was undeniable. Somewhere in the world, his mate had just been rejected, and she was hurting badly. The throne room trembled slightly as his aura surged with sudden power. The warriors lowered their heads even further, terrified of the rage rising from their king. Find her. The command came out low and deadly. The beta of the Lichen Guard stepped forward cautiously. "My king, who find?" Alaric's eyes lifted slowly. When he spoke again, his voice carried the promise of destruction. The girl who just had her mate bond broken. Silence filled the chamber. Every wolf present felt the weight of his words. "But, my king," the beta said carefully, "how would we locate someone like that?" Alaric closed his eyes and inhaled. The scent appeared instantly, faint but unforgettable. Moonlight, rain, and something rare,
royal blood. His eyes snapped open. A dangerous smile slowly formed on his lips. "She's closer than you think." The beta stiffened. "Prepare the riders," Alaric ordered. "We leave tonight." The warriors rushed to obey immediately. But before they could leave the throne room, Alaric spoke again. "And send scouts to the Silverfang territory." The beta froze. "That pack belongs to Alpha Rowan. They are loyal to the council. If we interfere—" Alaric's gaze turned cold enough to freeze rivers. "If they harmed what belongs to me," his claws slowly slid from his fingertips, "there will be no Silverfang pack to defend." The beta swallowed hard. "Yes, my king." Moments later, the fortress roared with movement as Lycan warriors prepared their horses. Torches flared, weapons were sharpened, armor buckled into place. Because when the Lycan king rode to war, entire packs disappeared. Far away in the dark forest, Lyra stumbled through the trees, her legs weak from exhaustion. Tears streamed down her face. The rejection still burned inside her chest. Every step felt heavier than the last. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't go back. But the forest was darker than she remembered. Quieter. Too quiet. A twig snapped somewhere behind her. Lyra froze. Slowly, carefully, she turned around. Yellow eyes glowed in the darkness. Then another pair, and another. Rogues. At least 6 of them stepped from the shadows, their wolves already partially shifted. Their leader grinned, revealing sharp fangs. "Well, look what wandered into our territory." Ilara's heart pounded in terror. She had no wolf, no strength, no pack, and no one coming to save her. The rogue leader stepped closer. "You smell like a rejected mate," he laughed. "Those are always the easiest prey." Lyra backed away slowly. Her heel caught on a root. She fell hard to the ground. The rogues surrounded her instantly. "Please," she whispered, but the leader only smiled wider. "Don't worry." His claws extended. "We'll make this quick." High above the forest, the wind suddenly shifted, carrying her scent across the mountains, straight to the Lycan king. Alaric stopped his horse instantly. His golden eyes burned with lethal fury, because now he could smell it clearly. Fear, blood, and rogues. His voice dropped into a growl that made every warrior around him tense. They found her first. Then the Lycan king kicked his horse forward, and the hunt began.
The forest had never felt so silent. Lyra could hear her own heartbeat pounding inside her ears as the rogues slowly closed in around her. 6 of them, all larger, all stronger, all wolves with fully awakened beasts beneath their skin. And she had nothing. The rogue leader crouched in front of her, studying her like a predator examining wounded prey. "You smell strange," he muttered. Alara's chest rose and fell rapidly. Fear filled her lungs like ice. I don't want trouble," she whispered. The rogue laughed. "Trouble?" he repeated. Behind him, the others began circling. "You wandered into rogue territory alone, smelling like a rejected mate." His grin widened. "That is trouble." Another rogue leaned closer, inhaling her scent deeply. Then his eyes widened. "Wait." The leader frowned. "What?" The rogue tilted his head, confused. "There's something else in her scent." The leader sniffed the air again. For a moment, his expression changed. Then he shook his head. "Doesn't matter." He stood to his full height, claws sliding from his fingertips. "Kill her." Alara's heart stopped. The rogue lunged. She closed her eyes, but instead of pain, a roar exploded through the forest. Not a wolf's howl, something deeper, something older. The ground trembled. The rogues froze instantly. One of them turned slowly toward the trees. What was that? Then the forest erupted.
A massive black wolf burst through the trees like a living storm. It moved so fast the eye could barely follow. The first rogue didn't even scream. The lichen tore him in half before he could react. Blood sprayed across the leaves. The others stumbled backward in horror. "That's not a wolf," one of them shouted. "It's a lichen!" The creature's golden eyes burned like fire in the darkness. Alara stared in shock. She had heard stories of lichens. Every wolf had. Stronger than alphas, faster than betas, almost impossible to kill. Yet the creature standing before her was very real and very angry. The remaining rogues shifted fully into their wolf forms, snarling as they tried to surround the monster. But it didn't matter. The lichen moved like death itself. One rogue lunged. The lichen caught him midair and crushed his throat with its jaws. Another tried to escape. A single swipe of claws ripped open his spine. Within seconds, the forest floor was covered in blood. Only the rogue leader remained. He stared at the creature in pure terror. "Wait," he stammered. The lichen stepped forward slowly. Each step carried terrifying authority. "You don't understand," the rogue continued desperately. "We didn't know she belonged to someone else." The lichen stopped. Its golden eyes shifted toward Alara. For a brief moment, the monster softened. Something ancient flickered in its gaze. Then it looked back at the rogue. The creature shifted. Bones cracked, muscles reshaped. Within seconds, the towering form of a man stood where the lichen had been. Tall, broad, wrapped in raw power. King Alaric Draven. The rogue leader immediately dropped to his knees. The Lichen King!" His voice shook violently. "Please, mercy!" Alaric said nothing. He simply stared down at him with cold, ancient eyes. "You hunted her." The rogue trembled. "We didn't know she was yours." Silence filled the forest. Then Alaric spoke 3 quiet words. "She is now." The rogue's eyes widened, but it was already too late. Alaric's claws flashed once. The rogue's body collapsed lifeless onto the forest floor. The king turned slowly, and for the first time, he truly looked at her. Alara sat frozen on the ground. Her entire body trembled. The most powerful lichen in existence was standing just a few steps away, and his golden gaze was locked entirely on her. He approached slowly, carefully, like a predator approaching something fragile. Alara's heart pounded harder with every step he took. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was deep, commanding, yet strangely gentle. She shook her head weakly. I'm fine." But the moment she tried to stand, her legs gave out. The pain of the rejection slammed into her chest again. She gasped. Alaric's eyes darkened instantly. He could feel it, the broken mate bond, the scar it had left in her soul. A dangerous growl rumbled in his chest. "Who did this to you?" Alara hesitated. Her voice barely came out. "The Silverfang pack." Alaric's jaw tightened. "And the one who rejected you?" Her eyes filled with tears again. "Kale." The forest suddenly felt colder, because the Lichen King's aura exploded with quiet fury. Far away in Silverfang territory, Kale suddenly shivered without knowing why. Back in the forest, Alaric crouched in front of Alara. His eyes softened slightly. "You won't be alone again," he said. She looked up at him in confusion. "Why did you help me?" For a moment, the ancient king simply stared at her. Then he reached out. His fingers gently lifted her chin. Their eyes locked, and the moment their skin touched, a powerful surge of energy exploded between them. Alara gasped. Alaric's eyes widened. The bond, it wasn't broken. It had only been waiting. His voice dropped into a whisper filled with certainty. "You're mine." But before Alara could respond, a distant howl echoed through the mountains, then another and another. Alaric's warriors had arrived, but they weren't alone, because another scent filled the air. Silverfang wolves, tracking her. Alaric slowly stood, his golden eyes turned lethal. because the pack that rejected her had just walked straight into the territory of the Lycan King, and they had no idea what they had awakened.
The forest grew still. Even the wind seemed to hesitate between the towering pines. Lyra stood behind Alaric, her hands trembling as distant howls echoed closer through the mountains. Silver Fang wolves, her former pack. They were coming. Fast. Alaric remained motionless, his tall frame standing like a wall between her and the dark forest ahead. His golden eyes scanned the shadows, already aware of every movement approaching. Behind them, the Lycan warriors arrived silently through the trees, their horses stopping in perfect formation. Each one was larger than most pack wolves. Each carried the unmistakable scent of ancient bloodlines. The beta of the Lycan guard stepped forward. "My king," he said quietly. "Scouts confirm it. Silver Fang warriors." Ilara's stomach dropped. Of course they would come. Silver Fang didn't care about her feelings. They cared about reputation. A rejected mate wandering into rogue territory could stain the pack's honor, which meant they had only come for one reason: to bring her back, dead or alive. Branches snapped somewhere beyond the trees. Then figures stepped into the clearing. 6 wolves, warriors of the Silver Fang pack, and at the front, Kale. The moment his eyes landed on Lyra, shock flashed across his face. "She's alive." His warriors relaxed slightly behind him. But then Kale noticed the bodies of the rogues scattered across the ground. His expression darkened. What happened here? Then his gaze lifted and met Alaric's. The air changed instantly. Every wolf in the clearing felt it. Power. Kale stiffened. He recognized the scent immediately. Ancient, dominant, terrifying. "The Lycan King," one of the warriors whispered behind him. Fear rippled through the group. Kale straightened his shoulders, trying to maintain authority. "This is Silver Fang territory," he said cautiously. His eyes flicked toward Lyra. "We're here for her." Ilara's stomach tightened. For a moment, she thought Alaric might step aside. After all, she was nothing, just a rejected Omega. But the Lycan King didn't move. His voice came out calm, cold. "No." The single word carried more authority than Kale had ever possessed. Kale's jaw tightened. "She belongs to my pack." Alaric's golden eyes slowly shifted toward him. The temperature of the clearing seemed to drop several degrees. "You rejected her." The statement wasn't a question. Kale stiffened. "That's pack business." "And now," Alaric said quietly, "it's mine." Silence exploded between the two groups. The Lycan warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Kale frowned. "You have no claim over her." Behind Alaric, the Lycan warriors chuckled softly. Kale didn't notice, but his men did, because every wolf in the clearing could feel something strange in the air, something powerful, something forming between the king and the girl standing behind him. Alaric stepped slightly aside, just enough for Kale to see her clearly. Lyra stood frozen, confused, terrified. Her eyes met Kale's again. For the first time since the rejection, he truly looked at her, and something inside him stirred uncomfortably. Her scent had changed, stronger, richer, almost royal. "What did you do to her?" Kale demanded. Alaric tilted his head slightly. "Nothing." Then his gaze hardened. "Yet." Kale's patience snapped. He stepped forward aggressively. "Lyra, come here." Her body froze. The command of a future alpha still carried instinctual weight. But before she could move, a deep growl rolled from Alaric's chest.
The sound alone made several Silverfang warriors step back instinctively. She doesn't answer to you anymore. Kale's eyes flashed with anger. She belongs to my pack. Alaric's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. And you threw her away. The Lichen King turned slightly toward Lyra. Then he did something no one expected. He reached back and gently pulled her forward beside him. The moment their hands touched, the air exploded with power. A pulse of energy rippled through the clearing. Every wolf present felt it. The Silverfang warriors staggered slightly. Kale's eyes widened. The scent was unmistakable now. Mate bond. But not a normal one. Something deeper, older, impossible. No, Kale whispered. The Lichen King's eyes burned like fire. She is under my protection now. The Silverfang warriors stepped back instinctively, but Kale's pride refused to yield. You expect us to believe the Lichen King suddenly found a mate? Alaric didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly turned toward Lyra. His fingers gently brushed against the side of her neck, right over the pulse of her beat. Her breath caught. Every wolf in the clearing held theirs, because everyone knew what came next. Kale's voice cracked slightly. You wouldn't dare. Alaric's eyes never left Lyra. His voice dropped into a quiet promise. Oh, I absolutely would. His claws slowly extended. Ilara's heart pounded violently. What are you doing? But the moment she spoke, Alaric leaned down, and his fangs pierced her neck. The mark. The scent of the bond exploded through the clearing like wildfire. Lyra gasped as the connection slammed into her soul, stronger than anything she had ever felt. Unbreakable, ancient. The Lichen King had claimed his mate. Kale staggered backward. The Silverfang warriors stared in horror, because now the truth was undeniable. The girl they had rejected was the Luna of the most powerful king alive, and Silverfang Pack had just made a very dangerous enemy. Alaric lifted his head slowly. Blood glimmered faintly on his lips. His golden eyes locked on Kale. You're too late. Behind him, the Lichen warriors stepped forward, and the forest suddenly filled with the sound of dozens more approaching. Because the king hadn't come alone. Kale's voice dropped into a whisper of disbelief. What have we done? Alaric's answer came like thunder. You started a war. The moment Alaric's fangs pierced Alara's neck, the world seemed to stop. A shock wave of energy burst through the clearing. Every wolf present felt it, but something was wrong. Very wrong. Instead of the usual calm bond that formed between mates, the mark ignited like wildfire. Alara screamed. Her body arched backward as a surge of power flooded through her veins. The Lichen warriors stepped back instantly. "My king!" one of them shouted, but Alaric didn't move. His arms tightened around her as he held her upright. Golden energy pulsed beneath Alara's skin like lightning trapped inside her body. Her eyes snapped open. They were glowing. Not the soft gold of a wolf, not the silver of a normal Luna, but something far more dangerous, a burning, molten amber. The forest itself seemed to react. Wind burst through the trees, leaves swirled violently around them, even the ground trembled beneath their feet. The Silverfang warriors stared in horror. "What is happening to her?" one whispered. Kale's face had gone completely pale. "That's impossible." Alaric slowly pulled back, his eyes locked on the glowing mark on Alara's neck. It was changing. The symbol of the Lichen King should have been simple, a crescent claw mark, but now it was spreading. Dark lines of power branched outward from the bite, forming a symbol none of the Lichens had seen in centuries. The beta of the Lichen Guard inhaled sharply. "My king!" Alaric didn't respond. His gaze remained fixed on the mark, because he recognized it, or at least, he recognized the legend. Long ago, before the Pax ruled the land, there had been another bloodline, older than alphas, stronger than lichens, the royal wolves, creatures blessed directly by the moon goddess herself, but they had vanished hundreds of years ago, or so everyone believed. Alara collapsed forward suddenly. Alaric caught her instantly. Her glowing eyes faded slowly as the power storm around them finally calmed. The forest returned to silence. The lichen warriors approached cautiously. "My king, what was that?" the beta asked. Alaric lifted his gaze slowly. His expression had changed. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. "That," he said quietly, "was power." Behind them, Kale took a step forward. His voice shook with disbelief. "She was just an omega." Alaric's golden eyes flashed toward him. "No." The word struck like a blade. She was treated like one. The Silverfang warrior shifted uncomfortably, because now that the bond had formed, Alara's scent had changed completely. The weak, uncertain smell they once mocked was gone. In its place was something rich, ancient, royal. The beta turned toward Alaric again. "My king, if the mark reacted like that—" He hesitated. "There's only one explanation." Alaric finished the sentence for him. "She carries royal blood." The clearing fell silent. Even the Silverfang wolves froze. Kale's mind raced. Royal blood. That meant power beyond alphas, beyond packs, beyond even the council. And Silverfang had rejected her. A cold wave of regret began creeping through his chest, but it was already too late. Alaric lifted Alara gently into his arms. Her head rested against his chest as she drifted unconscious. She looked fragile, small, but the power he had just felt inside her told a different story. The Lichen King turned toward his warriors. "We return to the fortress." The beta nodded immediately. "And the Silverfang wolves?" he asked quietly. Alaric glanced toward Kale one last time. His voice was calm, but filled with warning. "They live. For now." Kale clenched his fists. "You can't just take her." Alaric raised an eyebrow slightly. "Watch me." The Lichen warriors mounted their horses. Within moments they were ready to leave. But just before Alaric turned away, he spoke again. "Consider this mercy." Kale's jaw tightened. "You marked her without her consent." Alaric's eyes darkened dangerously. "She was dying." Then his voice dropped lower. "And she is mine." Without another word, the Lichen King turned his horse toward the mountains. The riders disappeared into the forest like shadows, leaving the Silverfang pack behind. Kale stood frozen in the clearing long after they were gone. His warriors waited silently. Finally, one of them spoke. "Future Alpha, what do we do now?" Kale's gaze remained fixed on the direction they had gone. For the first time in his life, fear crept into his heart, because now he understood something terrible. The girl he had rejected was never meant to belong to Silverfang. She had been destined for a king, and if the legends about royal wolves were true, Alara Vale was far more dangerous than any of them had ever imagined. High in the mountains, hours later, Alara finally stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. Stone walls surrounded her, a massive chamber lit by flickering fireplate. She tried to sit up, but a deep voice stopped her. "Careful." Alara froze. She turned toward the balcony and saw him. Alaric stood there watching the moon rise over the mountains. The Lichen King, the man who had marked her. Her voice trembled slightly. "Why did you choose me?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned. His golden eyes burned softly in the darkness. "I didn't choose you." His gaze dropped briefly to the mark on Alara's neck. "You were always meant to be mine." But neither of them noticed something else happening. Far away, deep beneath the ruins of an ancient temple, a pair of glowing red eyes opened in the darkness, and a voice whispered through the shadows. "The royal bloodline has awakened." A slow smile spread across unseen lips. find the girl. Because if Lyra truly carried the power of the lost royal wolves, the entire world would soon be hunting her.
Morning light filtered through the tall windows of the lichen fortress. For the first time in years, Lyra woke without the sound of pack members whispering behind her back. No laughter, no insults, only silence. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy. She slowly sat up in the enormous bed. The sheets were softer than anything she had ever felt before, and the room around her looked more like a royal chamber than anything inside the Silverfang pack house. Stone walls carved with ancient symbols, large windows overlooking endless mountains, and the faint scent of pine and storm still lingering in the air. Alaric. Her hand instinctively moved to her neck. The mark was still there, warm, alive. The memory of his fangs piercing her skin rushed back instantly, making her heart beat faster. A knock sounded at the door. Lyra jumped slightly. "Come in," she said nervously. The door opened, and a tall woman entered the room. She wore dark armor similar to the Lycan warriors, but moved with graceful confidence. "My name is Celine," the woman said. "The king asked me to check on you." Lyra nodded slowly. Celine approached the bed and studied her carefully. There was curiosity in her gaze, but not the cruelty Lyra had grown used to. "You survived the royal mark," Celine said. Lyra frowned. "Was I not supposed to?" Celine hesitated. "No one has in centuries." Lyra's stomach dropped. Before she could ask more questions, another voice spoke from the doorway. "That's enough, Celine." Lyra looked up. Alaric stood there. Even in simple dark clothing, he looked like something carved from legend. Tall, powerful, his golden eyes scanned the room before resting on her. Celine bowed slightly and left without another word. The door closed. Silence filled the chamber again. Alaric stepped closer. "How do you feel?" he asked. Lyra shrugged uncertainly. "Strange." That was the only word she could find, because something inside her had changed. She could feel it, like a sleeping creature slowly waking inside her chest. Alaric nodded slightly. "That's normal." She looked at him sharply. "No, it's not." Her voice was more confident than she expected. "I've lived 19 years without a wolf." Her fingers curled into the blanket. "And now it feels like something is moving inside me." Alaric studied her carefully. Then he spoke quietly. "Come with me." Moments later, they stood outside in a massive training courtyard, surrounded by high stone walls. Lycan warriors filled the area, sparring and training. But the moment Alaric entered the courtyard, everything stopped. Every warrior bowed their head. Lyra felt awkward walking beside him. She was used to being invisible. Now, every eye was on her. Alaric stopped in the center of the courtyard. "Stand here," he said. She did. "What are we doing?" He looked directly into her eyes. "Finding your wolf." Lyra laughed nervously. "That's impossible." But Alaric shook his head. "No." His voice was calm. "You were never wolfless." The courtyard went completely silent. Lyra frowned. "That's what everyone said." Alaric stepped closer. His gaze sharpened. "No." His voice dropped lower. "They said what they believed." He gestured toward the mountains surrounding the fortress. "The royal wolves awaken differently." Her breath caught. "Royal wolves?" Alaric nodded slowly. "They do not shift at 16. His eyes glowed faintly. "They awaken when their true power is triggered." Lyra swallowed. "And the trigger was—" Alaric's gaze dropped briefly to the mark on her neck. "The bond." Her heart skipped a beat. Before she could respond, Alaric suddenly stepped back. "Show me." She blinked. "Show you what?" His voice turned commanding. "The power you felt last night." Lyra shook her head. "I don't know how." Alaric crossed his arms.
Then listen to it. She stood there awkwardly for a moment. Hundreds of warriors watched silently. Pressure built inside her chest. Frustration, fear, confusion. And then, something moved. A low sound echoed inside her mind. A growl. Her breath caught. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Alaric smiled slightly. "Yes." Her eyes widened now. "Wait, you heard it too?" "No." His voice softened. "But I know that sound." Her heart pounded violently now, because the growl inside her mind grew louder, stronger, ancient. Suddenly, a burst of energy exploded outward from her body. The warriors staggered. Dust rose from the stone courtyard. Lyra gasped. Her eyes glowed bright amber again. And somewhere deep inside her mind, a powerful voice finally spoke. "I've been waiting." Lyra froze. "My wolf." Alaric stepped closer slowly. "What does it say?" Her voice trembled. "It says—" She looked up at him, eyes burning with new power. "That it remembers you." The courtyard fell silent, because lichens had existed for centuries, and if her wolf remembered him, then Alara's bloodline was far older than anyone imagined. But before anyone could speak again, an alarm horn suddenly blasted from the fortress walls. Warriors turned instantly. The beta rushed into the courtyard. "My king!" Alaric's expression hardened. "What is it?" The beta pointed toward the mountains. "Scouts spotted an army." The warrior stiffened. "What army?" Alaric asked calmly. The beta swallowed. "The Northern Council." Lyra frowned. "The council?" Alaric's golden eyes darkened. "They must have heard about the royal awakening." The beta nodded. "They're demanding you surrender the girl." Silence fell across the courtyard. Every lichen warrior slowly turned toward their king, waiting. Alaric looked at Lyra for a long moment. Then he spoke calmly. "Prepare the gates." The beta hesitated. "My king, that's the entire council army." Alaric's lips curved into a slow smile. "I know." His eyes glowed dangerously. "Let them come." Because if the world wanted the girl he had marked, they would have to face the Lichen King first, and no army had ever survived that.
The fortress walls trembled as another horn echoed across the mountains. One long blast, then another. The signal was clear. Enemies were approaching. From the highest tower of the Lichen fortress, Lyra stood beside Alaric as they looked down toward the valley below. What she saw made her stomach drop. An army, hundreds of wolves spread across the valley like a dark wave moving toward the mountain. War banners snapped violently in the cold wind. Each carried the silver crest of the Northern Council, the ruling authority of the wolf world. Lyra swallowed hard. "They brought an entire army for me?" Alaric's expression remained calm. "They fear what they don't control." Below them, lichen warriors rushed across the courtyard, preparing for battle. Armor clanged, horses stomped nervously, weapons were drawn and sharpened. Yet despite the chaos, there was no panic, only readiness, because the lichens had fought wars long before the council ever existed. Alaric rested his hands on the stone railing. "Look carefully," he said. Lyra followed his gaze. Among the army of wolves marching through the valley, several figures stood out. Tall, powerful, wearing dark ceremonial armor. "The council elders," she whispered. Alaric nodded. "They rarely leave their territory." His eyes narrowed slightly. For them to come personally means one thing. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "They're afraid." Alaric turned his head slightly toward her. "Of you." Before she could respond, heavy footsteps echoed behind them. The beta of the Lichen Guard approached quickly. "My king." Alaric didn't turn. "Report." "The council army will reach the outer valley within the hour." He hesitated slightly. "And they sent a messenger."
Alaric sighed softly. Of course they did. Moments later, the fortress gates opened. A single rider entered the courtyard below, the council's messenger. The wolf dismounted and stood proudly despite the dozens of lichen warriors surrounding him. "Lyra Vale," the messenger shouted. His voice echoed across the fortress walls. "You are commanded by the Northern Council to surrender immediately." Lyra stiffened. Alaric's expression darkened slightly. The messenger continued loudly. "You carry the bloodline of the royal wolves, a power forbidden by council law." The warriors around the courtyard began murmuring. Even Lyra felt confused. "Forbidden?" she whispered. Alaric's jaw tightened. The council feared the royal bloodline long ago. Why? Because royal wolves were stronger than the council itself. Below them, the messenger's voice rose again. "If the girl surrenders peacefully, the council will spare the lichen fortress." The courtyard erupted with quiet laughter. The messenger looked around nervously. He clearly hadn't expected that reaction. Then a new voice echoed from above, deep, cold, unimpressed. "Spare us?" Every head in the courtyard lifted. Alaric stepped forward onto the balcony. His golden eyes burned like sunlight as he looked down at the messenger. The entire valley seemed to hold its breath. Because standing on the fortress wall was not just a king, it was the most feared predator the wolf world had ever known. The messenger swallowed nervously, but continued. "The council demands the surrender of the royal-blooded wolf." Alaric rested his hands calmly on the stone railing. "You came to my home," his voice carried easily across the entire fortress, "with an army." The messenger lifted his chin stubbornly. "The council has authority over all packs." A dangerous silence followed. Then Alaric smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator about to remind the world why it feared him. "Not this one." The messenger's confidence faltered. "You would start a war over a single girl?" Alaric's gaze shifted briefly toward Lyra beside him, then back to the messenger. "You misunderstand." His voice dropped lower. "This war started the moment you threatened her." Before he could open his mouth again, Alaric raised one hand, and the entire fortress fell silent instantly. Then the Lichen King gave a single command: "Close the gates." Massive iron doors slammed shut behind the messenger, trapping him inside the fortress courtyard. The wolf spun around in panic. "Wait! What are you doing?" Alaric's golden eyes gleamed with quiet fury. "You came here to deliver a message." The messenger nodded nervously. "Yes." "Good." Alaric leaned slightly forward. "Then deliver mine." The gates opened again. Lichen warriors forced the messenger back onto his horse and sent him racing down the mountain toward the waiting army. Alaric's voice thundered across the valley as the rider fled. "Tell the council this fortress will not surrender." His gaze hardened. "And if they want the girl..." The wind carried his final words across the mountains. "They'll have to take her from me." Below them, the council army began moving again. War horns sounded across the valley. The battle had begun. Beside him, Lyra felt her heart pounding faster, not just from fear, but from the strange power still growing in her chest. Her wolf stirred again, stronger this time, hungry. Alaric glanced down at her. "Are you afraid?" She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "Not anymore." A faint smile appeared on his lips. "Good." He turned toward the battlefield below, because thousands of wolves were now marching toward his fortress, and they had no idea what kind of storm they had awakened. But deep beneath the earth, far away from the fortress, those same red eyes from the ancient ruins opened again, watching, waiting, and a whisper echoed through the darkness. "The council thinks they control this war." A dark chuckle followed, but soon they will learn the truth, because the awakening of a royal wolf meant something far worse than war. It meant the beginning of an ancient prophecy, and Lyra Vale was standing at the center of it.
War horns echoed across the valley. From the fortress walls, Alara watched the Northern Council's army spread across the mountainside like a dark storm. Hundreds of wolves, warriors from dozens of packs, all moving toward one destination, her. The massive iron gates of the lichen fortress remained closed, but every warrior stood ready behind them. Claws flexed, swords drawn, armor glinting beneath the pale mountain sunlight. Yet, despite the approaching army, the lichens remained eerily calm. They were not afraid. They were waiting. Alara stood beside Alaric on the wall overlooking the valley. Her hands rested against the cold stone, but she could barely feel it, because something inside her chest was growing stronger. Her wolf. It stirred again, restless, impatient. Alaric noticed immediately. You feel it again. It wasn't a question. Alara nodded slowly. It's louder now. Her fingers pressed lightly against her chest, like it wants something. Alaric's golden eyes watched the advancing army below. It does. She frowned. What? His answer came quietly. Freedom. Below them, the council army finally stopped at the base of the mountain. Rows of wolves shifted into their battle forms. Fur spread across bodies, claws extended, the air filled with growls and snarls. The beta approached Alaric again. My king, they're preparing to attack. Alaric nodded once. Open the gates. Alara's eyes widened. What? The beta gave the command instantly. Massive gears groaned as the fortress gates slowly began to rise. Sunlight flooded into the courtyard as the entrance opened. Beyond it, the battlefield waited. Lichen warriors mounted their horses. Others shifted into enormous wolf forms, far larger than normal pack wolves. The ground trembled with the power of their transformations. Alara's heart raced. You're going out there? She asked Alaric. He turned toward her. His expression was calm, almost amused. They came looking for a fight. Then his eyes flashed gold. It would be rude not to answer. Before she could speak again, Alaric stepped forward. His body began to change. The shift was violent. Bones cracked, muscles expanded. Dark fur exploded across his skin. Within seconds, the massive black lichen towered over the courtyard, larger than any wolf Alara had ever seen. Golden eyes burned with primal power. The warriors around him howled in unison. The Lichen King had entered the battlefield. The gates finished opening, and the war began. Alaric leapt forward first. The massive lichen landed halfway down the mountain with earth-shaking force. The council army hesitated for a single moment. Then chaos exploded. Lichen warriors crashed into the council wolves like a tidal wave of claws and teeth. The sound of battle filled the valley instantly. Howls, snarls, steel clashing. Alara watched in stunned silence as Alaric tore through the front line of wolves. He moved like a living weapon, faster than anything she could follow. Every strike devastating, every movement precise. Within seconds, dozens of council warriors lay defeated. But the council had numbers. More wolves surged forward. And for the first time, Alara felt something strange. Not fear, frustration. Her wolf growled louder inside her mind. Let me out. Alara gripped the stone wall tightly. I can't, she whispered. You can. Her breathing quickened. They are attacking our king. The words echoed inside her mind. Our king. Her eyes dropped to the battlefield again. Alaric fought like a storm among wolves, but more enemies kept coming. Hundreds of them. Her wolf snarled again. We protect him. Suddenly, a powerful wave of heat rushed through her body. Alara gasped. Energy surged beneath her skin again, stronger than before. Her amber eyes began glowing. Down in the battlefield, Alaric froze mid-strike. He felt it instantly. Her power. His head snapped toward the fortress wall. Alara. Back above, the energy inside her finally exploded outward. Wind blasted across the fortress wall. The warriors nearby stumbled backward. Alara dropped to her knees as pain shot through her body. Bones shifting, muscles reshaping. But unlike normal wolves, her transformation was different, brighter. The air around her shimmered with golden light. The beta stared in disbelief. My king! Down in the battlefield, Alaric's voice thundered across the battlefield. Everyone back! The lichens instantly retreated several steps, just in time, because a burst of blinding light erupted from the fortress wall. The entire valley went silent. When the light finally faded, a new wolf stood where Lara once had. But this was no ordinary wolf. Her fur shimmered like silver touched by moonlight. Her eyes burned molten amber. And she was massive, larger than even the strongest alphas. The royal wolf had awakened. Gasps spread through the battlefield. Even the council elders stared in horror. One of them whispered in disbelief. The prophecy. The royal wolf lifted her head slowly. Her gaze found Alaric immediately, and then she howled. The sound shook the mountains. Ancient, powerful, a declaration of dominance older than the council itself. Every wolf on the battlefield felt it, and many dropped to their knees instinctively, because the forgotten bloodline had returned, and the world would never be the same again. But deep beneath the earth, those red eyes opened fully, watching, smiling. Good, the voice whispered through the darkness. The royal wolf has finally awakened, and now the real hunt could begin.
The valley fell into stunned silence. Hundreds of wolves stood frozen as the massive silver wolf stepped forward from the fortress wall. Lyra, but not the fragile girl they once knew. This creature radiated power, ancient power. Her silver fur shimmered beneath the sunlight like living moonlight, and her amber eyes burned brighter than any alpha's. Even the wind seemed to slow around her. Below, the battlefield had completely stopped. Council warriors stared in disbelief. Some even lowered their heads instinctively, because deep inside every wolf's instincts lived an ancient memory, the memory of the royal bloodline. Alaric stood in the center of the battlefield in his towering lichen form, staring up at her. For the first time in centuries, the Lichen King looked surprised. Then slowly, he smiled. A deep rumble of approval echoed from his chest. Above them, Lyra felt something new. Her wolf was no longer a distant voice. It was fully awake now. Its presence filled her mind with strength and clarity. "This world forgot who we are," the wolf said calmly. Lyra blinked. "You can speak clearly now." "Of course." The wolf's tone carried ancient pride. "We are royal." Before Lyra could ask more, movement erupted below. The council elders suddenly stepped forward. One of them raised his staff high. "Capture the royal wolf!"
The spell ignited instantly. Chains of glowing silver energy shot into the air toward Lyra. The attack happened so fast she barely reacted. But someone else did. Alaric. The massive lichen launched himself upward with terrifying speed. His claws slashed through the air. The magical chains shattered instantly. He landed between Lyra and the council army like a living shield. A furious roar exploded from his throat. The ground shook. Council warriors stumbled backward. But the elders didn't stop. Another one raised both hands toward the sky. "Royal wolves cannot be allowed to live!" Dark energy swirled around him. Lyra felt it immediately. The power felt wrong, corrupted. Her wolf growled inside her mind. That power does not belong to the wolves. Alaric sensed it too. His golden eyes narrowed dangerously. "Everyone fall back!" he roared. But it was too late. The elder unleashed the spell. A wave of black energy surged across the battlefield. Where it touched the ground, the earth cracked. Where it touched wolves, they screamed. Several council warriors collapsed instantly. The power was killing friend and enemy alike. The beta shouted in horror, "That's forbidden magic!" Alaric's growl deepened. The council has lost its mind. But Lyra suddenly stepped forward. Her wolf's voice echoed calmly in her mind. "This is why we awakened." Her silver paws touched the edge of the fortress wall. The battlefield watched in silence. "Lyra!" Alaric called. But she didn't stop. Her voice finally answered him. "I have to." And then she jumped. The royal wolf soared down into the battlefield like falling moonlight. She landed beside the Lichen King with surprising grace. The moment her paws touched the ground, the corrupted energy recoiled, as if afraid. The council elders stared in shock. "That's been possible." Lyra lifted her head slowly, her amber eyes locked onto the elder who cast the spell. Something ancient stirred inside her chest. Her wolf whispered, "Show them." Power surged through her veins again, but this time it didn't explode chaotically. It flowed, controlled. Golden light spread across the battlefield like dawn. The black magic began dissolving wherever the light touched. Council warriors staggered back. The elder shouted angrily, "You cannot stop this!" But Lyra took another step forward. The light intensified. Her voice echoed across the valley, clear, strong. "No more lies." The elder's staff cracked in his hands. The magic shattered. And suddenly, every wolf in the valley heard something else. A distant sound. Drums. Slow. Deep. Echoing through the mountains. Alaric's ears twitched. His head turned toward the northern ridge. More wolves were arriving, but these wolves carried a different scent. Older. Stronger. The beta's voice trembled slightly. "My king." Alaric already knew. The ancient packs. Hidden wolf clans that had vanished centuries ago, drawn by the awakening of the royal bloodline. And now they were coming, not to fight, but to witness, because the prophecy of the royal wolf had begun. But deep in the shadows beneath the battlefield, the red eyes watched everything, patient, calculating, and the voice whispered again, "Soon." Because the war between wolves was only the beginning. The true enemy had not yet revealed itself, and when it did, even the royal wolf might not be enough.
The battlefield had changed. Moments earlier, it had been chaos. Wolves fighting, claws tearing, magic exploding across the valley. Now, silence ruled. Hundreds of wolves stood motionless as new figures slowly descended from the northern ridge. The ancient packs. Their arrival felt different from the council army. Older, heavier, like the mountains themselves had begun to move. Lyra stood beside Alaric in her massive silver wolf form, her amber eyes watching the newcomers carefully. Her wolf stirred again inside her mind. They remember us. The leading wolf stepped forward.
He was enormous. His fur was dark gray streaked with white, and his eyes carried the calm authority of someone who had lived for many decades. Even the council elders stepped back nervously. The wolf shifted into human form. An older man now stood before the battlefield, wearing simple armor carved with ancient symbols. He looked directly at Lyra. Then he bowed. Not to the council, not to Alaric, to her. A ripple of shock spread through the wolves gathered in the valley. "The royal bloodline lives again," the old man said. His voice echoed calmly across the valley. Lyra slowly shifted back into her human form. The transformation was smoother this time, the silver light fading as she stood once more beside Alaric. She looked confused. "You know what I am?" The old man smiled gently. "We have been waiting for you." The council elders immediately stepped forward. "This is council territory," one of them shouted. "You have no authority here." The old man turned his gaze toward them slowly. The calm in his eyes vanished. "You lost your authority the moment you used forbidden magic." The elder clenched his fists. "You dare challenge the council?" Before the argument could continue, Alaric finally stepped forward. The towering lichen shifted back into human form beside Lyra. His golden eyes scanned the battlefield. "Enough." His voice carried the weight of command. Everyone fell silent instantly. Alaric turned toward the old man. "You came because of the prophecy." The man nodded. "Yes." Lyra frowned. "What prophecy?" The old wolf studied her for a moment. Then he spoke slowly. "Long before the council existed, the moon goddess created 3 bloodlines to protect the wolf world." He raised 3 fingers. "The royal wolves." He lowered 1 finger. "The lichens." Another finger lowered. "And the guardians." Lyra blinked. "I've never heard of the guardians." Alaric's expression darkened slightly. "Because they disappeared." The old wolf shook his head. "No." His voice dropped. "They were destroyed." A chill ran through the valley. Alara's wolf growled softly in her mind. "Not destroyed." The old man continued. "Thousands of years ago, something came into our world." The council elders shifted uncomfortably. One of them suddenly shouted, "Stop talking!" But it was too late. The truth had already begun. The old wolf's gaze hardened. A darkness older than wolves. Lyra felt a strange tension rising inside her chest. "Is that why the royal wolves disappeared?" The man nodded slowly. "Yes." The creature finally lifted its massive head above the battlefield. Glowing red eyes scanned the wolves below. Then they stopped, locked directly onto Lyra. A deep voice echoed from the creature's throat. Ancient, cold. "I remember you." The entire valley froze, because the creature wasn't speaking to the army or the council. It was speaking to her. Alaric's claw slowly extended again. The Lichen King stepped forward. "Lyra." His voice was calm, but deadly serious. "Stay behind me." But Lyra didn't move. Her wolf's voice echoed clearly in her mind. "This is why we were born." The creature began moving towards them, each step shaking the battlefield. The devourer had awakened, and the ancient war between monsters and wolves had begun again. Night fell over the valley like a blade drawn across the sky. The moon hung low and red, casting a violent glow over the battlefield that had become the heart of the kingdom's war. Smoke drifted through the forest, and the scent of blood clung to the air like a warning. Lyra stood in the center of it all. Her chest rose and fell as the silver mark on her collarbone pulsed with a steady, dangerous light. The power inside her was no longer something she could ignore. It was awake, and so was the enemy. Across the clearing, Celine stepped forward from the shadows, her cloak dragging through the dirt as if the darkness itself followed her. But she was no longer pretending. The gentle smile she once used to deceive the packs was gone. In its place was something colder, something ancient. Her eyes glowed with the same eerie silver as Lyra's mark. "You finally understand," Celine said softly. Lyra clenched her fists. "I understand that you lied to everyone." Celine tilted her head slightly. "No," she replied. "I simply told the truth too early." Kale stepped beside Lyra, his presence a wall of strength against the storm building around them. His golden eyes burned with barely controlled fury. "You manipulated the packs," he growled. "You started this war." Celine laughed quietly. "You think this is about the packs?" She lifted her hand slowly. The air shifted, and suddenly the wolves surrounding the battlefield stiffened, because the ground itself seemed to pulse with dark energy. Celine's voice lowered. This war was never about territory. Her gaze locked onto Lyra. It was always about her. A ripple of confusion moved through the warriors gathered behind Kale. Lyra felt it too, a cold dread sliding down her spine. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. Celine's smile widened. "For centuries, the Alpha bloodline has protected a secret." She took another step forward. "A wolf born with a dormant mark, a wolf who could reshape the balance of power across every pack." Lyra's breath caught. Celine's eyes gleamed. "You." Kale's body tensed beside her. "No," he said quietly, but Celine's gaze remained fixed on Lyra. "You thought the Alpha mark chose you because Kale claimed you?" Her laugh echoed across the clearing. "No, little wolf." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire valley. "You were born for it." The ground beneath Lyra's feet trembled. Memories flashed through her mind. The strange dreams she'd had since childhood, the way wolves had always reacted strangely to her presence, the instinctive fear some of them felt. Celine spread her arms slowly. "The Alpha King's mark didn't create your power." Her voice darkened. "It unlocked it." A low growl rolled through Kale's chest. "You're lying." Celine shrugged. "Am I?" Then she raised her hand sharply. From the edges of the battlefield, a group of wolves stepped forward. Lyra's stomach twisted, because she recognized them. Members of her old pack, the very wolves who had cast her out. And standing among them, her former Alpha, the man who had sentenced her to exile. Lyra felt her wolf surge violently inside her. "You said she was weak," Celine said mockingly to the old Alpha. The man looked uneasy now. "I didn't know." Celine's voice sharpened. "Of course you didn't." She gestured toward Lyra. "Because power like hers doesn't appear obvious at first. It has to be broken open." The words hit Lyra like a punch. Broken open. The exile, the humiliation, the suffering. Celine had planned it. "You manipulated my pack," Lyra whispered. Celine's smile returned. "I gave them a suggestion." Rage exploded through Lyra's chest. The silver mark on her skin flared brightly. Every wolf in the clearing stepped back instinctively. Even Kale felt the surge of power. "Careful," Celine warned softly. "That anger, that pain," she leaned forward slightly. "That's exactly what awakens the power inside you." Kale grabbed Lyra's arm. "Don't listen to her." But Lyra could barely hear him. The memories were flooding her mind. The night she had been cast out, the laughter, the cold snow, the loneliness, all of it feeding the fire burning through her veins. Celine watched with satisfaction. "Yes," she murmured, "feel it." Her voice lowered into something darker, because once you unleash it, her smile sharpened, you'll finally become what you were always meant to be. The wind exploded through the valley.
Silver light erupted from Lyra's mark, surging outward like a storm breaking free. The ground cracked, trees bent violently under the pressure. Wolves staggered backward as the raw force rolled across the battlefield. Kale tightened his grip on Lyra's shoulders. Lyra! Her eyes snapped open, and for a moment they burned silver. Not fear, not pain, but power. Celine's smile widened slowly. There it is. The ancient power of the Alpha bloodline had finally awakened, and now the entire kingdom would either bow to it or be destroyed by it.
The dawn over Blackthorn Valley burned gold across the horizon, as if the world itself had decided to witness the birth of something new. For the first time in generations, the entire territory stood gathered in the clearing before the Alpha King's Hall. Every pack, every warrior, every elder. They had come to see her. Lyra stood beside Kale at the top of the stone platform, the wind threading through her dark hair as the morning light caught the silver mark glowing faintly on her collarbone. The mark that had once been whispered about. The mark that had once made wolves bow their heads in fear. The mark of the Alpha Queen. But the path to this moment had been carved through betrayal, blood, and truth. Months had passed since the night Lyra had ended Celine's reign of deception. The hidden network of traitors inside the royal territories had been dismantled piece by piece. Wolves who had secretly followed Celine's twisted ideology had either fled or faced judgment. For the first time in decades, the packs were united. But unity did not erase memory, and the wolves gathered in the valley remembered exactly who Lyra had been. The girl cast out, the broken Omega, the one abandoned by her own pack. A murmur rippled through the crowd as Kale stepped forward. The Alpha King's presence alone could silence armies, yet today his gaze softened when it turned toward Lyra. "Wolves of the North," he began, his voice carrying across the valley. "You all know my strength. You have seen my battles. You have followed my command." His golden eyes swept over the thousands gathered below. "But today, I stand before you not to rule alone." He turned and extended his hand toward Lyra. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd, because in the old ways, Alpha Kings ruled alone. Queens were symbolic, silent, but Kale's voice cut through the murmurs like steel. The era of silent queens ends today. Lyra's heart pounded as she stepped forward. She could still feel the ghost of the girl she once was, the one who had stood trembling in the snow outside her old pack's gates, rejected, humiliated, left to die. And yet, here she stood, not because she had been chosen, but because she had survived. Kale's voice rang out again. This woman was cast aside by those who should have protected her. A low rumble moved through the wolves, but fate saw what they could not. He placed his hand over the glowing mark on her skin. The Alpha mark did not claim a broken Omega. His voice hardened with pride. It claimed the strongest wolf in this kingdom. The clearing fell into stunned silence. Then something unexpected happened. An elder stepped forward from the crowd. It was Alpha Roderick, the leader of the Western Claw Pack, one of the oldest and most respected wolves alive. Slowly, deliberately, he dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled through the valley. One by one, other alphas followed. Warriors knelt. Elders bowed their heads. Thousands of wolves lowered themselves to the ground, not for Kale, but for Lyra. Emotions surged through her chest so powerfully she had to fight to keep her composure. For years she had been invisible. Now the entire kingdom bent before her. Kale leaned closer, his voice low enough only she could hear. "Still think the world wanted you broken?" A soft laugh escaped her. "No," she said. She looked out over the sea of wolves kneeling before her. "I think the world was just waiting for me to rise." The wind shifted then. A powerful current of energy rolled across the valley,
and suddenly every wolf lifted their heads at once because they felt it, the change. The ancient magic woven into the alpha bond ignited fully between Lyra and Kale, two powers merging, not ruler and mate, but king and queen, equal, unbreakable. Lyra stepped forward, her voice ringing across the valley with a confidence that no longer felt borrowed. For too long, packs have ruled through fear, through hierarchy, through strength alone. Her gaze sharpened. That ends now. The wolves listened in absolute silence. Strength will always matter, but loyalty, justice, and unity will matter more. She raised her chin. No wolf will ever again be cast aside as worthless. Her voice lowered, filled with quiet fire. Because the pack that abandons its weakest member, her eyes flashed silver, is the pack that destroys itself. A roar erupted across the valley. Thousands of wolves lifted their voices to the sky, not in submission, but in allegiance. Kale smiled beside her. Not the ruthless Alpha King feared across the territories, but a man who knew something rare had just been born. A kingdom stronger than any before it. Because it was no longer ruled by power alone. It was ruled by two wolves who had fought their way out of darkness. And as Lyra stood beside him, watching the rising sun paint the valley in gold, she realized something extraordinary. The girl who had once been cast aside had not just survived, she had become the most powerful wolf in the world. And this time,